The Holy Gospel according to Mark. Glory to you, O Lord. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go and anoint Jesus' body. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who's going to roll the stone back for us from the entrance to the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb. For terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. They said nothing to anyone. Okay, time to wrap it up. We can all head to Easter brunch. I will see you next Sunday. Okay, maybe not yet. I mean, you all did come all this way, and you look so pretty. Remember how it began? Mark chapter 1, verse 1. The beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ. And how it ends? They said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. Sure, it technically goes on for another 12 verses, but most scholars agree it's not authentic to Mark's original story, the oldest resurrection account. How is it good news that the women were afraid to tell anyone of Jesus' resurrection? Asks biblical scholar Raymond Brown. Mark's resurrection account ends not with alleluias and Easter lilies, but with burial spices, a missing body, fear, and silence. And for all our alleluias this morning, Jesus is nowhere to be found in this resurrection gospel. The women knew where Jesus was, not 2 days ago. They had been looking on from a distance. As darkness came over the whole land, as Jesus hung on the cross, as he cried out, questioning God's presence, as he breathed his last. They saw his body taken down from the cross, and they saw the tomb where his body had been laid to rest. Everything around them says death, another scholar writes. So they came to the tomb expecting death. Under the suffocating weight of inexplicable anguish and grief, moving through the fog of what had to feel like an interminable 2 days, they came to the tomb expecting death. More of the same. On Easter Sunday, we come to church expecting resurrection. Because over 2,000 years later, we know the story. But imagine for a moment that Good Friday is all you know. Imagine that you had been standing looking on from a distance with Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, and Salome, silently, helplessly witnessing this gruesome execution. Imagine that you went home that night trying to sleep, but you just can't shake that awful image. Imagine the next day, moving through a fog of grief and confusion. Imagine the day after, finally bringing yourself to gather up some spices to anoint the body, to do the only thing you can think of to do, without any expectation that you'll actually be able to do it, because who's going to roll the stone away for us? They came to the tomb expecting death. More of the same. More fog, more grief, more uncertainty, more despair. Maybe you don't have to imagine for too long. Maybe you only have to look on from a distance at the world around us. Maybe you don't have to look all that distantly at the grief and fear and uncertainty closer to home. We come to the tomb expecting death. All our experiences of living marred by brokenness. Why should we expect anything different today? This time last year, maybe you remember, I had been newly called as pastor of this congregation. It was March 26th, the 5th Sunday in Lent, to be exact. And despite some wise counsel from colleagues and friends, I decided to stick around and start right away. To spend the following week living out of the Spring Hill Suites on Central Avenue, and to start my new call less than a week later on April 1st, the eve of Holy Week. Talk about throwing one's self into the deep end. And yet, somehow, my experience of this Holy Week has still felt more chaotic than starting a new call on the cusp of Holy Week. I'm an Enneagram Type 1. I don't know if that means anything to anyone here, but the Enneagram Type 1 is the perfectionist. I like lists, and I probably have a spreadsheet for that, whatever that is. I like things in order, and I like feeling on top of my to-do list, however long it is. Sometimes the longer, the better. Much to an Enneagram 1's worst nightmare, however, this past week has been a week full of late nights and long days, and constantly feeling like I was woefully behind. As the week went on, I came to each day expecting more of the same. Late night writing sessions and last-minute preparations, with little time to catch my breath, let alone center myself in worship for these holy days. I came to each day in a fog, expecting more of the same just to make it through that day's liturgy, and on to the next, one at a time, until Easter Monday. Well, what I got was resurrection, new life. Not just today, but every night of the 3 days, savoring and centering myself in each moment. The laying on of hands, the foot washing, the stripping of the altar, the reading of the Passion, the bidding prayer, the veneration of the cross, all of it, each ritual, another opportunity for new life for my weary body and soul. New life in community among the people of God. In the midst of my expectations of more of the same, that's where resurrection happened. The women came to the tomb expecting more of the same. What they got was resurrection. No wonder they were startled. Nothing in their experience could have prepared them for this. They said nothing to anyone, for they were speechless. To paraphrase one of my favorite writers, Debbie Thomas, God's incomprehensible work of redemption had collided in real time with the broken bewilderment of their lives. Their bewilderment, their terror, their fear is real, but it doesn't diminish the good news of the resurrection, even if they can't wrap their minds around it just yet. I believe, most of the time, Thomas goes on, but I don't yet understand. I cling to the resurrection, but I don't know what to do with death's ongoing cruelty. I trust that Jesus reigns, but I don't comprehend the elusive nature of his kingdom. I believe that all things will be well, but I don't understand why they're not all well now. The beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, as Mark announces, finds its culmination in the empty tomb, among the women, and in all their terror and amazement. Because here's the thing. Good news is really only good news because the circumstances into which it breaks forth are anything but. What are you looking for? What do you expect? The same Jesus who has been raised was also crucified. This is quite literally the crux of our faith, that Jesus must suffer, be killed, and after 3 days rise again. There is no resurrection without crucifixion. There is no victory over death without first the dying, then the rising. This is why we need the fullness of Holy Week, the palms, the passion, the betrayal, the cross, the tomb, and finally, only after all of this, the rising to new life. Mark's story might not end with alleluias and Easter lilies, or even a Jesus appearance, but it does end with resurrection, with God's incomprehensible work of redemption that meets us where we are in all of our fears, all of our doubts, all of our worries, all of our anxieties, and upends all of our expectations of what is possible. This is resurrection, not limited to one day, for every Sunday, every Lord's Day is a little Easter. Every Sunday we show up week after week. Every Sunday God meets us here in bread and wine, in water and word, in song and prayer, in the body of Christ among and around us, in witnessing to each other and to the world, that despite everything we have come to expect, resurrection will find us.